Hello, I'm Amy Zawi with the Jerusalem Connection Red Alert Report for Wednesday, March 27th, Updates from Around the World, Part 2. Last week I discussed how the undercurrent to malign Israel and negate or erase the history of the Jewish people starts in the very corridors of the average public school and then bleeds into the colleges through the BDS movement, which works hard to collect fresh, moldable minds in a guise to advance human rights and equality. And yet they rail to marginalize and even eliminate an entire people and their history as well as their state through a twisted application of exploiting the story of the Arabs and how the now identified Palestinian people are suffering in order to prove their stance. BDS, Boycott, Divest, and Sanction, is the so-called nonviolent arm, I say, of the ages-old movement to destroy God's people and a people who have contributed for millennia to the world in so many ways I cannot even begin to list them. But from the foundations of Western thought to the principles of the American governmental system to cell phone technology, irrigation, and water treatment advancements and how to make a desert bloom, the Jewish people suffer at the hands of the world unjustly, and all the enlightenment and progressiveness that time has produced has not dropped a spotlight on this deceptive spirit and will always try to eliminate the Jews. And in today's world, this also means eliminating their state. Keep in mind there is only one Jewish state on the planet. Based on the majority of inhabitants of a nation, which will reveal the identity of their government and their culture, 52 nations on the planet have Islamic or Muslim majorities. 49 have Roman Catholic, 20 have Protestant, 12 have Orthodox Christian, and 4 have Hindu majorities. 1 has a Jewish majority. And based on these numbers and the culture that is born out of a nation with the religious foundation among its people, we can clearly see that only one nation has repeated accusations and sanctions against it, and it is the only one that's Jewish. And when you look at the UN sanctions and the number of them and against whom they are, the majority seem to press up against Israel. And that bias is so clear and the double standard is so obvious because the criteria used to sanction Israel at the UN is not then equally applied to its neighbors. An interesting point was discussed about 2 weeks ago on a TV news interview with Alan Dershowitz. Alan Dershowitz is a Jewish attorney in America, a Harvard's law professor emeritus, and a law scholar. And he was discussing the 3 freshman congresswomen with their unabashed bias and anti-Semitism and criticism of Israel. And he believes that the leanings of this freshman class, well, they're going to break the party. Dershowitz insists that the Democrat Party is not anti-Semitic and that most of its members are clearly not as well. But he admits, just like Jeremy Corbyn split the Labour Party in England with his unabashed Jew-hating and anti-Israel stance, many good people have walked away from the Labour Party in England. And so too he conjectures and laments that many good people will walk away from the U.S. Democrat Party if something isn't done about these 3. And why do we think these freshman congressmen so openly espouse anti-Semitism? Because they feel safe to do so, and that they can hide behind the gender, ethnic, or Muslim card to deflect any disagreement against them. This is a mentality on college campuses as well. The need for the safe space means you can accuse someone of anything and then take cover in this setup of do not offend me with your disagreement. Forget due process, critical thinking, and investigative inquiry. Just say how you feel about something, and if somebody disagrees and has the nerve to do so with perhaps some facts, you can just claim you're offended for being targeted, and you can name some factor about yourself, like your gender or your national origin or your religion. This mentality is what is allowing anti-Semitism to seep into the culture at an alarming rate. What I'm hoping and praying for is that younger Jews will actually wake up to this, and the evangelical Christian community will continue to work alongside the Jewish youth and the more mature population as well. And I would like to see it be a stronger alliance than ever for the Christian community and the Israeli and Jewish communities throughout the world as they deal with sweeping through the ashes of the many battles that students are facing on college campuses throughout the West. BDS, remember, took a foothold onto college campuses disguised as a political debate about Israel's policies, but it was quickly identified as simply being a nonviolent arm of the terrorist plot to remove Israel, and the hostility that Jewish students and faculty and Christians and other students who support them, well, that is unprecedented. Every time you hear about a politician or school or professor criticize Israel with any lack of context or legitimate fact, take another look at this person or its organization and its history and involvement with the BDS movements or various characters such as Linda Sarsour and her organizations. I would bet hard money that you will see a direct alignment between those academics who are outspoken against Israel and the violent players on the terrorist side of the fence. Ask these people the following questions. Where in the Middle East are women afforded equal rights under the law? Where in the Middle East are people protected under the law to practice any religion or no religion at all? Ask them where the LGBTQ community and its members are able to live in the Middle East without fear of violence or even death. Ask them when there's a disaster in the area, who's first on the scene with medical or other humanitarian aid. Ask them what neighboring nations have contributed in innovations for medical, security, farming, water, and the list goes on. Ask them what state in the Middle East has a standard of living best for all its inhabitants, whose schools produce doctors and scientists of Jewish, Arab, Muslim, Druze, male and female origin, who can then better their own lives and the lives of the people around them. Remind Omar, AOC, and Tlaib, our trio in the U.S. Congress, why the U.S. is such an ally of Israel in the first place. Nobody actually seems to talk about it. While these women screech about their unhappiness about the U.S.-Israeli ties and alignment and friendship, the little bit of pushback I see is simply that the U.S. must always stand in Israel and it's a long-time ally. Nobody's actually explaining why this is. The why the U.S. is such an ally to Israel is deep and exciting and has many, many facets. But at the very start, you can find a discussion by asking those questions I just listed. And then ask these people, why is not the same standard of scrutiny held against the nations in the Middle East that take well over 90% of the land and identify as Muslim? And yet the one and only one state in the world that identifies as Jewish gets the bullseye of attack, lies about its existence. And moreover, ask them why the double standard. Ask them, of these three women, for example, in Congress, who claim to be feminists, ask them how their sisters in the neighboring nations to Israel are faring compared to the women who live in Israel. Be aware, be very aware, call out, pray out, and support organizations that are trying to find the truth and spread the truth. These organizations may be connected to your personal network or in your community. If you see people talking against Israel without facts and without cogency, speak up about it. Ask questions. Even if you don't want to answer why they're wrong, ask them questions that make them reveal their ignorance or their lies. And go and vote. Vote in every election that you can vote on. Then you make sure that the people that you're voting for are aligned with Israel, or if they're aligning against Israel, that you vote against them. Prayers are needed. Shavua Tov, and have a great week.